Hi everyone. Today we're going to be discussing solving quadratic equations by factoring. Before we begin, I want to start with this warm-up. So go ahead and pause the video and complete the first two examples. All right, so for number one, in order to factor this, I'm looking for numbers that multiply to get positive 12 that add up to negative 7. These two numbers are negative 3 and negative 4. So this factors to the quantity x minus 3 times the quantity x minus 4. For number two, I notice that both of these have a common factor of 3y. This is our greatest common factor. So factoring out the greatest common factor of 3y, what's left inside is y plus 2. Now, today we're going to be talking about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So all of these skills that we learned in the past about factoring is going to be useful for our notes today. In order to solve a quadratic equation by factoring, we have to use what's called the zero product property. The zero product property states that if p and q are any real numbers, then the product p times q equals 0, then either p is equal to 0 or q is equal to 0. And this is only true if they're equal to 0, if p times q is equal to 0. If two things multiplied together equals 0, then that means that one of those factors has to be 0. So let's go ahead and just try a few examples and see how this works. If p equals 0, then we're saying that 0 times q is equal to 0. Well, 0 times q is 0, and so that we get 0 equals 0. That checks out. Now, if q is equal to 0, then we have p times 0, not q, times 0 is equal to 0. And p times 0, again, is 0. We get 0 equals 0. That's true. So either p or q, or it could even be both of them, are equal to 0. So the zero product property, if there's a product of p and q, any two real numbers, then one of those factors, p or q, is equal to 0. So let's see how this applies to solving quadratic equations. Let's begin with the first one, the quantity x minus 9 times the quantity x plus 3. Now, if you notice here, just like in the zero product property, we have something, x minus 9, times another thing, x plus 3, is equal to 0. So this is saying the zero product property states that one of these factors, at least one of these factors, is equal to 0. So in order to solve this, what we can do is set up both the equations, set each factor equal to 0. So in this case, each factor, x minus 9, equal to 0, or x plus 3, the other factor, set that equal to 0. So we're taking both of these factors and we're setting them equal to 0. So x minus 9 equals 0. Now we can solve this. Adding 9 to both sides, we get x equals 0 plus 9 is 9. Our other solution, if we subtract 3 from both sides, we get the solution x equals negative 3. So the solutions to this quadratic equation are x equals 9 or x equals negative 3. Let's go ahead and check our work and just check and make sure that these are solutions. So if we check x equals 9, if we plug in 9 in for x, we get the quantity 9 minus 9 times the quantity 9 plus 3 equals 0. Well, 9 minus 9, that equals 0. And 9 plus 3, that equals 12. So we have 0 times 12 equals 0, which is true. So this is a solution. Check x equals negative 3. If we would have the quantity negative 3 minus 9 times negative 3 plus 3 is equal to 0. Negative 3 minus 9 is negative 12 times negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And negative 12 times 0 is 0. So this checks out. So both of these solutions, x equals 9 and x equals negative 3, make this equation true. Let's try one more example. We have 4x times the quantity x plus 11. Again, we can use the zero product property. This is already factored. We can see that we have something times another thing is equal to 0. Okay, and it doesn't have to necessarily be two factors. It can be multiple factors, but we have a product of factors is equal to 0. So what we can do is we can set each factor equal to 0. So 4x equals 0 and x plus 11 equals 0. So in order to solve both of these, the first one on the left-hand side, divide by 4 on both sides, and we get x is equal to 0. That's one solution. Or for the other equation, if we subtract 11 from both sides, we get x is equal to negative 11. Let's go ahead and check both of those solutions. So let's check x equals 0 first. We have 4 times 0 times the quantity 0 plus 11. Well, 4 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 11, let's actually go ahead and evaluate that. That's 11 is equal to 0, and 0 times 11 is equal to 0. So that checks out. Plugging in negative 11, we get 4 times negative 11 times the quantity negative 11 plus 11 is equal to 0. 4 times negative 11 is negative 44, and negative 11 plus 11 is 0. Negative 44 times 0 is equal to 0, so that one checks out as well. Now, notice that for both of these examples, both were equal to 0. In order to use the zero product property, one side of the equation must be equal to 0, and the other side must be a product, or in other words, it needs to be factored completely. So let's go ahead and solve number 4, and I've listed out the steps on the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and follow those steps. So step 1 is to make sure one side of the equation is equal to 0. So I noticed that in number 4 here, we don't have that it's equal to 0. In order to set it equal to 0, we're going to subtract 33 from both sides. So we have x squared minus 8x minus 33 is equal to 0. Step 1, done. Step 2 is to factor. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to get to negative 33 that add up to negative 8. Those numbers are negative 11 and positive 3. So this trinomial here, this quadratic trinomial, factors to x minus 11 times the quantity x plus 3. And again, this is an equation, set it equal to 0. Step 3, use the zero product property. So we're going to set up two different equations with each of these factors. So we have x minus 11 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. Step 4, solve each separate equation. So x minus 11, we add 11 to both sides. We get x equals 11. Our other solution, subtract 3 from both sides, and we get x is equal to negative 3. And last but not least, step 5 is to check our solutions. So let's go ahead and plug in both of our solutions. X equals 11. Plug it into the original equation. So the original equation is x squared minus 8x equals 33. Let's plug in 11 in for x. We get 11 squared minus 8 times 11 is equal to 33. Evaluating the left-hand side, we get 121 minus 88 is equal to 33. And 121 minus 88 is 33 equals 33. So this is true. So this solution checks out. Let's try negative 3. So negative 3, don't forget those parentheses, squared minus 8 times negative 3 is equal to 33. Negative 3 squared is positive 9, and a negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. So we get 9 plus 24, which is 33. So this checks out as well. All right. The remaining problems are to try these on your own. Go ahead and pause the video and you can unpause to check your work. All right, so for number 5, we're going to solve each of these by factoring. So this first one, I know I can factor this into the quantity k minus 3 times the quantity k minus 1. That's equal to 0. Using the zero product property, I can set up two equations, k minus 3 equals 0, or k minus 1 equals 0. Solving each of these equations, for the left-hand one, I add 3 to both sides, I get k equals 3. The other equation, I add 1 to both sides, and I get k is equal to 1. Let's go ahead and check our work. So we'll plug in 3 into each of these, anywhere we see k. So we'll plug in 3, we get 3 squared minus 4 times 3 plus 3. And we want to know if that's equal to 0. 3 squared is 9 minus 12 plus 3 equals 0. 9 minus 12 plus 3 is indeed equal to 0, so that solution checks out. Plugging in 1, we get 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 3 is equal to 0. 1 squared is 1 minus 4 times 1 is 4 plus 3 is equal to 0. 1 minus 4 plus 3 is indeed equal to 0. That checks out. Number 6, this trinomial factors into v plus 8 and v minus 6. Using the zero product property, v plus 8 equals 0, or v minus 6 is equal to 0. Solving both of these equations, we get solutions v equals negative 8 and v equals positive 6. Let's go ahead and check. So we have negative 8 squared plus 2 times negative 8 minus 48 is equal to 0. Well, negative 8 squared is 64. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. Minus 48 is equal to 0. 64 minus 16 minus 48 does equal 0. So that checks out. Plugging in 6, we have 6 squared plus 2 times 6 minus 48 equals 0. 6 squared is 36 plus 2 times 6 is 12 minus 48 equals 0. And 36 plus 12 minus 48 does also equal 0. Both of these solutions check out. 2 more, number 7. Now for this one, it might be tempting to divide both sides by 8x. Be very, very careful. Step 1 is to set the equation equal to 0. So we're going to add 80x to both sides. So we have 8x squared plus 80x is equal to 0. Let's go ahead and factor. I can factor out that 8x, and we get 8x times the quantity x plus 10 is equal to 0. Using the zero product property, I set up 2 equations, 8x equals 0, or x plus 10 equals 0. For the left-hand equation, divide both sides by 8, and we get x is equal to 0. Our other equation, subtracting 10 from both sides, we get x is equal to negative 10. Let's go ahead and check using our original equation. So x equals 0. So if we plug in 0, we have 8 times 0 squared is equal to negative 80 times 0. Well, 0 squared is 0. So we have 8 times 0 is equal to, and negative 80 times 0 is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. So we have 0 equals 0. That checks out. Let's plug in negative 10. So we have 8 times negative 10 squared is equal to negative 80 times negative 10. On the left-hand side, we have negative 10 squared is 100, positive. And negative 80 times 10 is positive 800. 8 times 100 is also equal to 800, so we get 800 equals 800. This solution checks out as well. Last example for today. Let's go ahead and set it equal to 0 by subtracting 24 from both sides. We get a squared minus 5a minus 24 is equal to 0. Factoring this, we get factors a minus 8 times the quantity a plus 3 is equal to 0. Using the zero product property, a minus 8 equals 0, or a plus 3 equals 0. Solving both of these equations, we get solutions a equals 8 and a equals negative 3. And last but not least, let's go ahead and check our work. So plugging in positive 8 into our original equation, we get 8 squared minus 5 times 8 is equal to 24. 8 squared is 64, minus 5 times 8 is 40, equals 24, and 64 minus 40 is equal to 24. So that solution checks out. Let's go ahead and check negative 3. So negative 3 squared minus 5 times negative 3 is equal to 24. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. Minus 5 times negative 3 is negative 15, is equal to 24. And 9 minus negative 15 is positive 24. This checks out as well. All right. So this has been our notes on solving quadratic equations by factoring. First we factor, then we use our brand new zero product property to find our solutions. We're going to get a lot of practice in class, so we'll study up and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.